Hello, I'm William Michael of the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, and this afternoon my wife asked me to do her a favor and talk a bit about how homeschooling families who are organized as homeschool co-ops or who would like to organize as homeschool co-ops can make use of the Classical Liberal Arts Academy as the academic program behind that co-op. And I've actually been involved directly in homeschool co-ops in the past. In fact, the Classical Liberal Arts Academy actually grew out of a homeschool co-op when it first started back in 2008. So I have experience with the activities of a co-op. I know what good co-ops and bad co-ops look like and what the differences are. So I'd like to share some advice and suggestions for how the Classical Liberal Arts Academy could serve as um, the fundamental source of academic content and activities for a homeschool co-op program. Now, I'll tell you right off the bat that what causes co-ops to fail is that the people who try to organize the co-ops have the wrong motive behind the activities and the organizations that they put together. Two things that are red flags and that cause co-ops to fail. Number one is people start co-ops who actually, privately or secretly want to start a private school. And they think that starting a homeschool co-op can be step one in starting a private school. That will never work because a private school and a homeschool co-op are two completely different things. A private school assumes the presence of expert instructors. If there are no expert instructors, there will never be a good school. This is the problem with modern schools. Modern schools have all of the secondary stuff of education, but they don't have good instructors. And if there are no instructors, there will not be a good private school. And just because some parents are excited about education doesn't mean that they're capable of starting a private school. And so if you're starting a homeschool co-op thinking that you're going to use the homeschool co-op as sort of a tadpole stage of development as you pursue the frog of private schooling, it's not going to work. You can't fake your way to a private school, and many of the schools that exist are not true schools because they don't have teachers. Um, so if you're thinking about starting a co-op for the sake of building a private school, it's not how you do it. It'd be better off to simply organize a private school around one or a few good teachers. So that's the first warning. The second warning is that a co-op is not a social club for homeschool moms. Uh, a homeschool co-op is an organization that's designed to improve the homeschool experience of all of the children being homeschooled in that community. It's not an organization that's designed by mothers for mothers. It's for children. It's for homeschool students. And so if the folks involved are just trying to organize a ladies' club, it's not going to be an effective homeschool co-op. The people running the co-op really have to be committed to homeschooling. They have to be good managers. They have to be movers and shakers, as it were, who can mobilize people in the homeschool community to contribute to the co-op, because that's the whole point of a homeschool co-op. And let me talk about that a little bit before we get into any details. St. Thomas Aquinas explained that human beings are designed for society, to live in society together. God intentionally gives to us different gifts, strengths, weaknesses, needs, and so on. He forces us to depend upon one another. And what we see in modern society is a tendency among Christian people to run away from the challenges of civilization and to pretend that simplicity, not just simplicity, but a selfish, um, I should say primitive culture, not really simplicity, but primitivity is some kind of virtue. And it's the opposite of what Christian teaching actually says to us. What we see in the church is a living body made up of different members, and those members are all given different experiences, different powers, different gifts, and so on. And what makes human society fulfill its potential is when all of the different members of society contribute their unique gifts and abilities, and everyone in the community, benefits from that diversity of gifts and resources that's shared by the community. The purpose of a co-op in homeschooling is for homeschooling parents and anyone else in the community who's interested in helping homeschooling families, for them to get together and cooperate, to work together. That's the purpose of a homeschool co-op, for homeschool families to cooperate, to work together to give the children in that community the best possible homeschool experience. That's the purpose of a homeschool co-op. There's a place for solitude. Solitude is necessary because without private individual work, an individual has nothing to contribute to the group. So there's a place for solitude, for the development, cultivation of one's own unique abilities and gifts. For example, when I was in college, I spent my college years locked away in the basement of the Rutgers University Library studying. And now, 20 years later, the work that I do in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy is the fruit of that solitary, private work that I did at that time. And we all have different achievements and resources to share, assuming that we've done that work in solitude, seeking our own vocation, seeking to fulfill the potential of our interests and abilities, and then we offer them and we contribute them generously for the benefit of the whole community. That's how society works. There's no one who can give a child the best education by himself, and wise men don't even attempt to do that. I always use St. Thomas More as an example because as educated and wise a man as he was, he still sought out the help of tutors for the education of his own children. Wise men simply don't want to be isolated. They want to benefit from community, and a homeschool co-op is intended to be such a community. The end of the homeschool co-op is the benefit of the homeschool students that belong to that community. So there should be a diversity of gifts and abilities and professions and resources. And, we talk about diversity in modern society, and that's what diversity is supposed to be, a diversity of abilities, a diversity of resources and skills, of knowledge and experience, not a diversity of religions or sexual orientations and things like that. That's not the kind of diversity that human society is interested in. But there should be a diversity in that homeschool co-op where the children receive the benefit of a number of different skills and bodies of knowledge, experiences, and so on from the adults in that homeschool co-op. So that's the kind of thing that families need to think about. It can't be a mom's club. There can't be 20 identical women wearing the same clothes, participating in the same activities, studying the same books, doing the same things. That's not a co-op. So it's not a ladies' club, and it's also not a private school. private school is organized around a teacher that serves a curriculum, and homeschool co-op is not intended to be a private school. So those are just two quick warnings about what needs to be avoided in a homeschool co-op. Now, if we want to talk positively about a homeschool co-op and even more specifically how the Classical Liberal Arts Academy can be used, it's like the perfect combination of the perfect organization and the perfect resource to serve that organization. When a co-op is organized, there has to be some unifying curriculum. It's an academic organization, after all. It's got to have a curriculum, and the families have to share in a curriculum. When the kids are working on all different curricula and they get together, you end up just having play days, and that's not a homeschool co-op. There has to be an academic unity in the group. The kids have to share a common curriculum. They have to be studying the same things, and there has to develop a hierarchy within that community of kids getting started and more experienced kids, because those kids can also turn around and help the younger kids and enrich the homeschool experience, which is the purpose of a homeschool co-op. So you want there to be this hierarchy of achievement that develops over time, where the older kids, the more experienced kids, can help the younger kids. When the older kids look back, they see the younger kids studying the same lessons they did. And when the younger kids look up to the older kids, they see the older kids doing what they're going to do in the future. That's academically, that's what a homeschool co-op should feel like. Again, a homeschool co-op is not like a private school. It's a parent-run organization. It's not a faculty-run school. It's a parent-run homeschool cooperative, and that's very different. Every parent in the homeschool co-op is a school administrator. They're all administrators of private homeschools. They all have complete authority over their children's education, something that isn't really true in a school, because when you enroll a child in a school, you basically delegate the teaching authority to the school, and you pay tuition and accept their program. Whereas a homeschool co-op is very different, because the homeschool parents are in control. They're in charge. So it's very different, and you have to be asking the question of how a homeschool co-op can best serve the children in that co-op. Okay? Now, when you look at the Classical Liberal Arts Academy curriculum, it allows for the development of that culture, first of all, because it actually is the true classical Catholic curriculum. It's not just, Joe Smith's idea of education. It's not Mary Johnson's, build your own curriculum thing. It's not some random collection of books or suggested titles for study and discussion. It's actually the curriculum. It's the classical Catholic curriculum. So if you were going to consider a homeschool co-op that was going to be organized by some curriculum, the best homeschool co-op is going to be the one that's organized on the real classical Catholic curriculum. And you'll see that when you put it into practice and start to use it. If you use it diligently and intelligently, you'll see how a culture, a Catholic culture, grows out of the classical liberal arts curriculum. Hard to explain to families who haven't studied it. Hard to understand if you haven't yet worked at all in the curriculum. But I can tell you that you'll see real Catholic culture, intellectual culture, develop out of the classical liberal arts curriculum, and not from other, arbitrary collections of books made by different homeschool publishers. So it gives the potential for real Catholic culture to develop, intellectual culture. Don't get the homeschool co-op confused with the parish. Sacramental life and the Catholic culture of the sacramental life That's the life of the parish. We don't need to create our own community for Catholic culture. And that's one reason why I always talk against schools and Catholic colleges trying to advertise themselves by marketing the sacraments. The sacraments have nothing to do with the school community. They have nothing to do with the homeschool co-op. They belong to the parish. We already have a parish. We don't need to create a homeschool parish. All right? So we want to leave the sacraments to the priests. They're the ministers of the sacraments. We're talking about a homeschool co-op, and we don't want this counterfeit Catholic community that separates itself from the parish and then plays around with sacred things. Those sacred things belong at church, not in the homeschool co-op. If the homeschool co-op wants to interact with the sacraments, they should go to the parish. They should go to church, not bring church to the homeschool co-op. We have to keep sacred things sacred, not profane them by trying to make use of them to promote our private group or school or whatever else we're doing. What is missing in Catholic culture is real intellectual culture, and you can't fake it. You can, dress things up with sacraments and things like that outside of the church, but that's the culture of the parish. That's not the culture of the homeschool co-op or the school. There needs to be an intellectual culture in the co-op or in the school that gives the co-op its identity and makes it valuable to everyone who's involved. And the only curriculum that's going to provide a real Catholic intellectual culture is the classical liberal arts curriculum, because it's the only real Catholic system of education that allows for a truly Catholic culture to develop. So that's why the classical liberal arts are so important. Now, when you look at the classical liberal arts, you know that they divide into different, I wouldn't say levels, but I would say different subject areas. We know that the children start with grammar, and they study the classical languages. And it's at the lowest levels, it's very simple study, memorizing grammar rules, memorizing vocabulary, doing simple tasks like that are appropriate for young children. And then it moves up into more complex activities like interpretation and translation work, poetry, and things like that. They get more complicated. It moves from grammar to syntax to prosody. So there's a real hierarchy there, not an artificial one, not an artificial one based on students' age, which has nothing to do with intellect, not based on some artificial public school grade level, which has nothing to do with intellect. The classical liberal arts allow for a real intellectual hierarchy to develop in a community that gives that community some real culture, some real order and structure, which you can't fake. So we can see how the classical liberal arts can contribute to some real order in a homeschool co-op. And again, that's just talking about grammar. You add to that reasoning and the different studies within reasoning, and then rhetoric, activities that can be done and participated in once students have learned those subjects. Now you have the opportunity for disputations and activities like that. So there's real intellectual culture available through the study of the classical liberal arts. And then you've got the classical mathematics, which no one can even pretend to offer except a group that's ordered around the classical liberal arts. And then we've got philosophy and theology. So real intellectual culture, which is what the homeschool co-op should be interested in developing, is only going to be possible with a real Catholic curriculum. And you're only going to find a real historical Catholic curriculum in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. It's that's not my opinion. That's just a fact. That's objective reality. Other homeschool programs are using modern artificial curriculum plans just to check off K to 12 boxes, but they're not concerned with restoring or enjoying the benefits of the ancient Catholic curriculum. which we do in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. Now, as far as getting practical with a co-op, what would you actually do? First of all, it's a homeschool co-op. So it has to be an organization made up of homeschool families that aren't playing around. It can't be a goofball club where people show up to the homeschool co-op activities, but they never study. And this is one of the challenges of the homeschool co-op. It can't just be a club for lonely homeschool people to come to and play. There has to be some discipline in a homeschool co-op. When the families go home and work privately, they have to study and get work done because that's what they bring to the homeschool co-op, which makes the homeschool co-op valuable. There has to be private homeschool study, and this is where a lot of homeschool co-ops, fail because the kids, it's like a teacher assigning homework and the kids go home and half the kids don't do the homework, and then the teacher plans the next class, assuming that the students have done the homework, and she finds out that half the kids didn't even do the homework, and her plans for the class won't work because the kids didn't do the lesson. A homeschool co-op where the families don't actually study, they just waste time at home and then show up to play at the homeschool co-op, that's not a homeschool co-op. That's just a play group. And that's what many homeschool co-ops degenerate into. They just degenerate into friendship clubs, play dates and things like that. And that's not the purpose of a homeschool co-op. So there has to be some discipline. There has to be leadership in a homeschool co-op that sets some standards and requires that parents who participate in the co-op do the work of homeschooling when they're home so that the group, when it comes together, can benefit from the progress that the students are making and the activities and different things that are planned for the group can be intelligent and that intellectual culture can be developed. So there has to be some discipline. The families have to be able to study at home and come together and have activities to do both at home and in common together when the co-op meets. Now in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, this is possible because all of the members of the homeschool co-op can have student accounts and family accounts in the academy, working online, having all of their progress measured. We can see their individual progress and promote individual progress among the families. But then when they come together, like I said, they can come together, all having been working in the same system, through the same courses, in the same lessons, watching the same videos, taking the same tests, and so on. And you can see how that unified academic culture can really become valuable for the students and the parents in the homeschool co-op. But there has to be unity in the curriculum, or the group really won't have anything to do. As far as activities go for the homeschool co-op, it's not just about coming up with games. It's about reinforcing the lessons and creating motivation for students, rewarding students who are working hard and challenging students to work hard who aren't working hard by contests where their studies are rewarded through the activities in the homeschool co-op. There should be awards given out. There should be contests that reward them for, their Bible studies, for their catechism studies, for their Latin vocabulary studies, for their Latin reading skills, for their math skills, for philosophy studies, on and on. Their studies should be celebrated and rewarded in the homeschool co-op. Students who aren't studying should be motivated and challenged to study more so that they can be celebrated in the community of the homeschool co-op. It should be a source of inspiration and motivation for academic work. These things have to be purposeful. They have to be intelligent. It's not just play days. It's not just ladies' club. It's not just, some babysitting time where moms get a break and they can have a cup of coffee. It really needs to be purposeful and intellectual. It really needs to motivate the kids to study, to reward the kids who study well, and to stir up the kids who aren't studying so well, to have some reason to go home and get serious about their studies. So the activities need to be purposeful. And in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, because the kids are sharing in the same studies and similar activities, what they do in common can be easily organized and can actually do some good for everyone that's involved. Another benefit of the homeschool co-op is that kids can make relationships and get connected with other kids who are at the same level they're at, studying the same courses they're studying. So when they go home, they can collaborate. They can talk to each other, maybe hang out and study together in smaller groups, not in the big co-op group, but in a smaller group, maybe just 2 or 3 kids or 3 or 4 families that get together, and they can find kids who are working on the same stuff they're working on, and find some study partners to share their studies with. That makes studying much more fun than studying in isolation all the time. Again, even though isolation and study in solitude is necessary. So from individual family studies to the co-op whole group activities to sort of breakaway smaller groups where families start to get to know each other and make their own connections within the homeschool co-op, that really enriches the ability of homeschooling to accomplish all that it has the potential to accomplish. The other benefits of a homeschool co-op is that the kids can get together for activities and events that are simply cultural or that promote religion and things like that. They can go to a retreat together. They can go to a Eucharistic Congress together. They can go to Mass together once a month. They can participate in religious events. They can go to each other's sacramental celebrations and celebrate together. Think of how cool it is when a homeschool co-op finds out that one of the members of the co-op is receiving confirmation, and they all go to celebrate the confirmation with this member of their community and make that event really special. They can celebrate birthdays together. It can be a source of fellowship and celebration together. That's a great use of a homeschool co-op. They can organize athletic activities to promote physical fitness and good health. Not formal, modern, competitive sports like football or lacrosse or things like that, but they can organize things like having the kids register to run in a local 5K race and running together, or playing other, again, not the big expensive competitive sports, but participating in what I consider lifetime fitness activities like running and exercising together, lifting weights, things like that. Homeschool co-ops can promote activities of that kind. There's things like that can be done. As far as sports go, the reason why I don't think that co-ops should waste their time on sports is, again, just like the sacraments belong already to the parish community. There's a natural place for those things. In the same way, sports already have their own community. There's recreational sporting leagues and organizations where if kids want to get involved in sports, that's where they should do that. They should do that in those sporting associations, not in a homeschool co-op where that really can't be done. Likewise, with music and dance, it's not necessarily a good idea to have, Mrs. Jones, who knows how to play 4 songs on a piano, teach piano lessons. That's really not where piano is studied and learned. It's better to have the children privately work with piano teachers or go to a dance school to get those kinds of lessons. The homeschool co-op has to understand its purpose and know its limits. It's not to be all in all a solution for everything the community needs, because there already are communities for different aspects of our lives, and we need to participate in those things in their appropriate places. Okay, so don't allow the homeschool co-op to become a counterfeit of all of the other communities that families need to participate in. So those are some things to think about. As far as how homeschool co-ops can challenge students intellectually, one thing that I offer to any homeschool co-ops that are interested is to organize classes with me. If you'd like to have the kids study the classical liberal arts, and you've got set meeting times or meeting days when you get together, if you'd like to organize the kids into classes or groups, we can just schedule live teaching for those meetings. And I can actually, if you've got a widescreen TV in the house or wherever you're meeting, you can set up the widescreen TV in a room with a group of students, and we can have a live class together. So we could do things like that. Again, one of the benefits of the homeschool co-op is it's a collaborative effort from all the adults. I'm a Catholic classicist. Technology allows me to participate in your homeschool co-op. If you'd like to have a Catholic classicist teach Latin or Greek or rhetoric or reasoning or classical mathematics or philosophy or whatever, if you'd like to have that skill shared with your co-op group, we simply need to arrange that. That's fine. That's what I can offer to your co-op. Technology allows us to do that. Very simple to set up, very affordable for everyone involved. That's an opportunity to consider. The same thing is true of other studies. If there's if there is an expert in a different fields in the community, and they'd like to share with private classes and groups in a homeschool co-op, that's another good use of homeschool co-op time, to gather and actually have classes for the kids together, normally taught by someone, a guest teacher or an expert that's piped in through a video conference meeting or something like that. So that's another activity to consider that would greatly enrich the co-op activity. So having the homeschool co-op be what it's supposed to be and fulfill its unique purpose, and not allowing it to start to sprawl into areas like sacramental life and fine arts and actual academic instruction, when there already are places for those things to be, I should say, appropriate places for those things to be pursued, is one way to keep the co-op useful and relevant in the community, and not allow it to become something that's really silly, that tries to be all things and ends up being nothing. So keep it as a source of intellectual culture in the Catholic community. Make the focus of the homeschool co-op intellectual, not fine arts and music, not athletic, not professional, but intellectual, because that's the role of the homeschool co-op in the society. There's a million and one different things that can be done, but what I want you to see most importantly is, by having the kids enrolled in a common curriculum, having them working on the same things, having them so that they can interact with each other while they're studying privately and yet still stay in touch and collaborate, then gather together for co-op activities and be able to organize activities that motivate and reward their private studies, and also help them in those private studies, and then also allow for the breaking off of small groups as the kids develop relationships and families develop close personal relationships. These different levels of social interaction, those are the kinds of things that the homeschool co-op makes valuable to the homeschool community. And all of those things are very, very easy to achieve with Classical Liberal Arts Academy. So those are some thoughts. Um, if there's if there's any specific questions that you have about your specific homeschool co-op, what you would like to do, what you can do, you'd like to talk about your group in specific, I ask that you get in touch and schedule a phone call or a video chat, and we can take up the details of your own group and talk about how you can develop the group, promote the group. I can even help you promote the group online, what the group can do, getting the group set up with accounts in the academy, possible private classes taught to members of the co-op when the co-op gets together. All of these different opportunities that exist, we just would need to get into the practical details of your specific group and look at what's possible. So get in touch with us to discuss those things, but remember, a homeschool co-op is an intellectual organization that's serving the purpose of maximizing the potential of homeschooling and creating real Catholic intellectual culture by the study of the classical liberal arts. That's what can really give a homeschool co-op some identity and purpose and make it effective in fulfilling that role. I hope that's helpful. Those are just some initial thoughts on the question of homeschool co-ops. And like I said, when I started the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, it was actually the result of meetings and classes that we were having here in the Charlotte area, because there were some really talented and hardworking homeschool parents in the area that organized groups and activities and did some really awesome things. And when I started participating in those groups, tutoring and teaching classes, it all just started to explode. And that's what actually forced me to create the Academy website and start posting all of the lessons and things online. The Classical Liberal Arts Academy grew out of a homeschool co-op that I was helping to teach classes in. So there's great potential for homeschool co-ops. And let me say one more thing before I wrap up. I talk about the future of education quite a bit and the role that technology plays in education, because I foresaw these things back when I was a private school teacher, and I realized as the internet technology was developing, I was realizing how unnecessary the things were that we were doing in the private school. And I started working with homeschool families because I knew that that's where education was going. And then the whole Classical Liberal Arts Academy thing happened, and I left private school teaching completely. But as technology continues to develop, homeschooling is going to become more and more powerful. It's going to become more and more efficient, more and more dynamic. There's going to be more and more resources available. And I believe the homeschool co-op, if it's rightly conceived and organized, the homeschool co-op is going to become more and more important, possibly much more important than a private school. The private schools are going to start to lose their purpose. People are going to ask the question, other than daycare, why do I need a private school? Other than somewhere to put my children while I'm at work, why, if I didn't have to go to work, why would I need a private school? Everything they do is available online. It really is turning out to just be a daycare center for elementary, for kids ages K to 12. It really has no more academic purpose. It's no longer necessary academically. And when parents are forced to look at those tuition bills, every single year when the tuition bill comes, they're going to be asking the question, why are we sending our kids to the private school? Is it possible for us to homeschool? As parents move from, office-based work to remote work. I work remotely. Millions of adults are now working remotely. We're all going to be reconsidering the role of private schooling and asking ourselves whether private schools are necessary. And homeschooling is going to become more and more common, and the homeschool co-op is going to become more and more central to real academic progress. So I hope those are some helpful initial thoughts. If you want to get into details of your group's specific circumstances and needs, just get in touch and we can talk about those things and get into all those details. Because like I said, I have experience with homeschool co-ops. I believe in homeschool co-ops, and I'm very interested in helping with homeschool co-ops. I hope that's helpful. God bless you all.